Anytime I've been asked in the last few years, is Clemson going to take a step back or they're going to continue it? I haven't even really assessed the program as much as I've just assessed basic probabilities that it's impossible to keep up a 90 plus winning percentage for a decade. That's not really sustainable anywhere. It's happening maybe at two or three other places, but long term, will it even happen there? It's just almost impossible for the odds to keep up that kind of winning, getting to championship games, getting to the playoff all the time, winning 90+% of your games. Not that that shouldn't be a high standard and that they shouldn't shoot for the best. And I know that there's some talk out there that maybe Dabo Swinney's a little bit complacent and relying on what he's achieved in the past. And I know he comes to his program's defense at times, and I definitely understand it from his vantage point that he continues to promote and communicate the positive of what they continue to accomplish, getting back to an ACC championship season and getting, continuing to win 10 and 11 games every year, that, he tries to combat a lot of this negative talk and negative questions by continuing to just convey that it's not all negative. They continue to play at a high level.
Look, if you go down and look at this coaching staff, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, and not just the on-field assistants, but if you look at the guys who are in the analyst roles, there's very little college experience, very little. Tyler Grisham's in his third year now. C.J. Spiller's in his second. Brandon Streeter's got he's been at Clemson a while. But if you start looking down the line at the guys in these analyst roles who are supposed to have a heavy hand in game planning and that kind of stuff, or whatever it is they do, there is little to no experience. So not only is Dabo Swinney having to coach up players, he's having to coach up coaches. And they're kind of growing on the job. And I think Dabo built Clemson to be different than Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. He built Clemson to compete with those guys, but he didn't build it to be like those programs. And fans don't want to hear this, but Dabo always uses that term developmental. When he talks about his program, it's a developmental program. I bet I've heard him say it 100 times this season. And it's usually when he's talking about the transfer portal. And when you're going to rely that heavily on development, that makes your margin for error when it comes to missing on a guy much less smaller when compared to some of these other teams who will just go to the portal and take a guy that they don't want to take, a guy over someone they don't want to wait to develop, if that makes sense. So I think we've seen where Clemson has missed on a few guys, maybe at wide receiver, definitely missed on a quarterback. A lot of inexperience on that coaching staff. And I think that's what we're seeing, a byproduct of that on the field right now. There's going to be some growing pains. Now, while I don't think the culture can survive, actively recruiting a bunch of guys out of the portal, I do think it can survive some outside hires, a fresh look on the fresh set of eyes on the offense, because I think it's gotten stale. We've talked about this many times. I think the offense is kind of stale, has been for a few years, and Brandon Streeter takes a lot of heat. But I'm not a guy that delves too deep into play calling. We talked about that before too, and I can always say I wish this call or that call would have been different. But I haven't had this huge big problem with play calling this year. People talk about Clemson abandoning the run in the Orange Bowl. The run pass play balance was pretty even. I think it was 47-43 going into the final drive, but they went zone read heavy. Klubnik kept the ball a lot. But, Streeter takes a lot of heat for his play calling, and this is not his offense. It's the same offense Tony Elliott was using, same offense. It's just it might have some little tweaks here and there, depending on who's running it, but still the same offense at its core, at its foundation. And I think Clemson could really benefit from bringing in somebody with a fresh perspective, fresh set of eyes, new ideas. Take a look at that thing. If nothing else, if you're not going to bring in somebody, send those assistants out on the road. I know Dabo used to do this with his assistants. They used to go exchange ideas with other coaching staffs, in the off season. And I don't know that they've done that in a while. I don't think they've done it in a while. I haven't heard about them doing it in a while anyways. At the very least, that's something you can do. I do think there are some areas Dabo needs to take a long, hard look at. And I'm not saying he needs to fire anybody or everybody. I don't have any idea about that. I'm not inside enough to know that. But I do think there are a couple areas he needs to take hard looks at. And I would start with that offense.